Hey fellow gamers, Chatty Sisa here. So, Electronic Arts has been sold for $55 billion to Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, along with Silver Lake and Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners. Yeah, you heard that right. The same people that banned Dragon Age the Failguard now own the company that published it. EA is private now, the stock's at an all-time high, and the gaming press is losing their minds. Let's unpack what that means, especially considering the undead remains of the company called BioWare, aka Zombieware. Let's recap what actually happened first. As I've said at the start, Electronic Arts, one of the biggest publishers in gaming, has officially been sold. But who are these new buyers? They're quite a combination, honestly. The main one is Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, the same one that already holds stakes in Nintendo, Capcom, Take-Two and Activision Blizzard, for example. For years, they've been quietly buying their way into the industry, and now they've added EA to their collection, the home of FIFA and Madden. Then there's Silver Lake, a US private equity firm known for tech investments rather than the gaming industry. They've had money in companies like Dell and Airbnb, for example. And finally, Affinity Partners is an investment group run by Jared Kushner, who is probably best known for being Donald Trump's son-in-law and so far invested rather into banking or financial institutions than game studios or publishers. It's not exactly a lineup of creative visionaries, but financially it makes perfect sense.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
The Saudis didn't buy EA to own studios like BioWare for deep RPGs or moral choice storylines, and I'd be very surprised if they did. Now, they bought it for sports, sponsorship, and the digital football economy. They're obsessed with football, both the American one as well as soccer, and now they own the company behind the world's biggest football games. Everything else is collateral damage. And then there's the market reaction. Right after the sale was announced, EA's stock price surged past $200 a share, jumping more than 20% in a month. That's a new record high. Ironically, higher than the premium the sale itself was supposed to deliver.
You serious?
Investors are celebrating, they're probably having champagne for breakfast now, and somewhere in Edmonton the Zombieware staff are polishing their CVs just in case. Since EA is now private, there's no need to keep up appearances for ESG-driven shareholders or the DEI brigade. No need to uphold the diversity checklist and all sorts of other nonsense. Just the new owners deciding what actually makes money. Which might be the real horror story for certain studios. Of course, that's the business side of things. When we look at the public reactions, especially from gaming outlets, those have been quite predictable. Kotaku called it a sale to some of the worst people around. Polygon speculated about creative freedom at risk, and several others managed to say the same thing in 3 different ways before publishing follow-up analysis the next day. This type of reporting is not exactly going to make gaming journalists more popular with the new owners. The irony, of course, is that these are the same voices who spend years applauding EA's corporate virtue signaling, the very kind of values that got Dragon Age the Failguard banned in Saudi Arabia for unsuitable content.
No way! Yes way!
I love how some news said, well, it could have been, and possibly, or maybe it was because of something else. What else then do you think was it that got it banned? Because In an Islamic country, it's always a mystery why rainbow marketing doesn't sell well, right? Then EA's CEO stepped out with a straight face to say, "Our company values will remain unchanged." Yep, I'm sure the new owners who just banned one of your flagship titles will be thrilled to see those Pride Month campaigns again next summer. Meanwhile, analysts are quietly noting that this is the largest leveraged buyout in history. And what almost nobody talks about is that EA now owes around $20 billion in debt.
Fuck.
You're asking probably the same as me, how is that even possible? If you look at all the details from the sale, you'll find there this information. The overall deal includes the investor consortium, the previously mentioned Saudis, Silver Lake and Jared Kushner, contributing $36 billion in equity. And the $20 billion is a debt that EA now owns to the JP Morgan Chase Bank, who financed the remaining amount of the deal. This will, of course, have to be paid off by EA, meaning the new owners. When you're that deep in the red numbers, something has to give, and it definitely won't be FIFA. Studios that don't bring in steady cash flow are suddenly looking very expendable. So while the press keeps debating moral values and creativity, the accountants are going through their balance sheets. Now the real question is what happens to BioWare. Or should I rather say Zombieware? Let's face it, that studio we see today is a hollow, rotten shell of what they used to be. A walking corpse wearing the name BioWare, but inside there's nothing left of it anymore. They've been running on memories of what they once were, putting out the same promises with every new game about how this time they will get it right. And notice, this is also currently used for Mass Effect 5, by the way. We all saw what happened with the previous games in the past decade at least. They've been producing flop after flop. And then a year ago we've got Dragon Age: The Failguard, which instead of a dark, gritty fantasy RPG was a modern woke lecture on pronouns and gender identities, with some of the worst written companions we've ever seen in a BioWare game, in-game puzzles for 4-year-old kids, a story with no real conflict, no tension and nothing compelling. This includes some forced out-of-place humor, dumbed-down combat mechanics, and the complete ignorance of the previous games in the franchise. Yeah, aside from bringing in a few recognizable faces. So when people say BioWare might be sold or shut down, it's hard to argue. There isn't much left to lose. Mark Dara, one of BioWare's former Dragon Age directors, actually said that EA's new owners won't censor BioWare's progressive messaging unless they want apocalyptic backlash. From who exactly? The nose-ring alphabet soup mafia? That tiny but loud portion of the population? That famous, almost non-existent modern audience? That didn't buy so far any of the WoW games over the past few years, making them all flop? Because normal gamers definitely won't riot, they'll just move on to something that doesn't try to lecture them between missions, to good games that are well written, have a good story, and cater to the majority of the people and to their preferences, not some DEI tick boxes.
Maker's panties, I was so proud.
Oh,
Ah, shit. They're still holding it, sorry.
What are you doing?
Pulling a barb.
Meanwhile, inside the studio, people are updating their portfolios and polishing their resumes, as you can see on the screen. One comment I read summed it up perfectly. Remember to note where every one of the fleeing rats goes to hide, because they'll only spread their disease to those new companies if they have a chance to. I couldn't have said it better myself. So will EA actually do something about this mess? Most probably, but With 20 billion in debt and investors to please, BioWare's not exactly at the top of EA's favorite people's list. Let's look at what options they have. I believe there are really only 3 options. The first one is that EA keeps the IPs, like Mass Effect and Dragon Age, but shuts the studio down. That's a very likely outcome. EA almost never sells its IPs. They can still make money off the merch and the previous games, which is why they'll most likely keep it, but they're very unlikely to continue financing a studio that hasn't produced a good game since more than a decade and has only cost the publisher millions of dollars with no return on investment. The sooner they stop Zombieware in continuing with Mass Effect 5, the sooner they stop bleeding more money. Don't forget those 20 billion debt they now have. Option 2 would be that EA keeps the IPs but sells BioWare. In other words, they offload the people but not the titles. In this way, they could hope to at least make some additional money from the studio's sale. But who would want to buy a studio with a reputation this damaged without the rights to the games that made it famous? And full of Vogue activists on top of that. Exactly, no one. Option 3. They sell both BioWare and the IPs to someone else. That's another possible scenario, less likely like number 1, but definitely more probable than number 2. The Saudis didn't just spend $55 billion to argue about elves, pronouns or romance subplots. That's for sure. They bought EA because they love sports and a good revenue. For them, FIFA and Madden print money. Dragon Age and Mass Effect do not. Not at this time, and the question is if they ever again will. Both IPs have been damaged, probably beyond repair, by Zombieware to a point where many gamers already turned their backs on any future plans related to these 2 IPs. You'd have to basically completely disregard the last games in both franchises and start from scratch with something totally new. How many original fans of these IPs would be on board for something like this is very questionable. So whatever happens next, BioWare's absolutely not in charge anymore. Their fate now depends on accountants and the new owners of EA. If the numbers don't look good, the plug gets pulled. It's as simple as that. And many people will say it's overdue already for a long time. At this point, the studio's only real mission is just survival. If they manage to keep the lights on long enough to finish Mass Effect 5, it'll be a miracle. But even then, it's hard to imagine it will feel like the BioWare we once knew.
This whole thing could have been avoided.
Shut the fuck up. Let me die in peace.
I still see people having this big shiny hope that somehow, against all odds, Zombieware will rise from the grave and make a masterpiece again. I'm not convinced, not at all. Maybe there's an option 4 for EA? What if they keep the IP but rename or rebrand the studio to get rid of the bad reputation that BioWare already has? This would allow them to finish Mass Effect 5 without the negative public perception. But honestly, is it even a good idea to make Mass Effect 5 right now? We all know it's supposed to continue the trilogy, but that means someone's ending, someone's shepard, will be declared the canon one. And no matter what they will pick, they will alienate a portion of the fanbase. Yet again. Those previous decisions we've made in the original trilogy, those political choices, the alliances between races, who lives and who dies, that was what made the trilogy so special. It was our story, not theirs. Each one of us had a different universe at the end of the game, and yes, I'm now purposefully ignoring that nonsensical Star Child with the 3 differently colored endings that basically only dealt with the Reapers. What I'm talking about is which companions were alive? Did you cure the genophage? Did you manage to broker peace between the Quarians and the Geth, or was one of these races wiped out? What about the Rek'Nai, the Vermaya survivor, and what about Javik? Notice how they've already started the marketing campaign and trailers with Liara and some androgynous-looking Daedem main character. People aren't even sure if that's supposed to be a male or a female protagonist. It looks more like a choice between body type A and body type B with some weird pronouns to me, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, I loved Liara in the original trilogy. A great friend to my Shepard, and I especially love the Shadow Broker DLC in Mass Effect 2. But it seems they bring her back again the same way they dangled Varric in front of our noses during the marketing campaign for the Failguard. False advertising is how I'd call that, considering his role in the game. Or rather the fact he was dead the whole time and we've been just talking to a ghost. What a way to destroy a character and player expectations. Not fond of seeing something similar happen also to Liara. I personally don't care about a game that canonizes some nonsense I didn't previously choose. It's the same reason I don't care about The Witcher 4 now anymore. If you tell players their choices matter and then erase them later, you've already lost the magic. So for me, at this point, I'd rather play the newest Expanse game, the Expanse Osiris Reborn, or wait for Exodus from Archetype Entertainment. Those look much more interesting to me than a messy game that will again bring more disappointment and anger to a portion of the existing fanbase. Or what's still left of it.
He's dead, Jim.
So what do you think? Are you actually looking forward to the next Mass Effect game, or are you like me and plenty of other people who think that the EA sale will go exactly how we all expect, namely badly? Maybe you're like me and you're looking forward to another different sci-fi game instead. Speaking of which, there is something new going on with the Expanse, and that one might be worth your attention. But more on that in another video. Thank you very much for watching, stay tuned and game on!